NRHH's last lecture series. We're really excited to be offering a second one this year, which is really, really great. We are really proud to present Dr. Luttmann, who teaches in the math department and has been a professor here since 1970. He is semi-retired right now. He just returned from a trip to Africa, which is one of the amazing things he will be talking about tonight and during his last lecture presentation. So thank you all for coming, and without further ado, Dr. Luttmann.
Aloha! Well, so I hope you're all in the right place. You weren't expecting stand-up comedy, so I look like Chris Rock. And thank you for your warm, welcoming applause. They say that an audience uses applause to express faith, hope, and charity. Faith at the beginning of the lecture, hope during the lecture, and charity at the end. I want to thank Neil, who's back there behind the video, for arranging this tonight, and to Bo, the National Resident Hall Honorary, for organizing this series. I especially want to thank my colleague in the math department, Professor Sharon Bannis, who did me the honor of nominating me for this series, and thanks to all of you for coming. You're in for an eclectic evening. This presentation may take some turns even unexpected. I thought it might be useful to start out with a brief biography so that you have some context to put some of the other things I'm going to say in. I was born in central New Jersey, in the city of New Brunswick, just across the street from Rutgers University. That was in August of 1940, between the beginning of World War II between Germany. Germany invaded Poland on the 1st of September 1939, and the entry of the United States into the war the day after the Japanese attacked our fleet at Pearl Harbor on 8 December 1941. I was the oldest of 4 siblings. My parents and my grandparents were all born in New Jersey. However, 7 of my 8 great-grandparents were born in Europe, in either Germany or the British Isles. The one great-grandparent who was born in North America had an interesting lineage. Her father was Jacques-Louis Chevalier from the Francophone part of Switzerland. Chevalier means horseman or knight in French, and indeed he was descended from knights. His grandmother was Catherine Antoinette, who was a lady-in-waiting to and cousin of Marie Antoinette, and unfortunately suffered the same fate in 1789. My great-grandmother's mother, Pamela Marsh, after whom my sister's name, was descended from a long line of Marshes that went back in North America to 1640 New Haven. My parents both lived through the Great Depression. It affected them somewhat differently, however. My mother was a city girl. Her father had been an accountant with Johnson & Johnson before the Depression, when he lost his job and didn't work for 11 years. My mother was the oldest of 7 siblings. When she graduated from high school, she wanted to go to college, but with some cars. She had to work to support the family as a secretary of Johnson & Johnson. My father was a little better off. He was from a rural area outside of New Jersey, where things were pretty rustic anyway. He grew up in a house without running water, or indoor toilets, or central heating. He did manage to go to college. He went to Rider College in Trenton, New Jersey, got a degree in business administration in 1936. He went to work on Madison Avenue in Manhattan in advertising. In 1948, he was hired by General Foods to do marketing for them. I spent the decade of the 40s in New Jersey, in blissful oblivion about all the important events going on in the world then. I have no recollection whatever of World War II, other than the day it was over. And the only reason I remember that is that it was the one time in my youth when my mother encouraged me to to make noise. She gave me a dish can and a big spoon, said, go out and speak and be on this. So I did. I beat my heart out and celebrating something I had no idea what. So I missed the development and first use, and to date, last use of atomic weapons, the founding of the United Nations, the beginning of the Cold War, the Berlin blockade, and the air bridge that supplied the city, the revolution in China. The first thing I remember of world significance was the invasion of South Korea by the North on the 25th of June, 1950, which happened to be my mother's 35th birthday. And I remember in the same year, the Russians exploded their first fission bomb, uranium bomb, and the United States exploded its first fusion bomb, the hydrogen bomb. By that time, we weren't living in New Jersey anymore. General Foods had sent my father to Battle Creek, Michigan, to be the marketing director for Post cereals. I didn't like this at all. I was used to New Jersey, but there was one small consolation for a boy, namely that Post cereals was the sponsor of the Roy Rogers and Dale Evans radio show. So Mr. and Mrs. Rogers, who were actually Mr. and Mrs. Leonard Sly, were occasionally in Battle Creek and once or twice in the dining at the Luttmann household. After 4.5 years, General Foods decided to send my father to Kankakee, Illinois, the marketing manager for Gaines Dog Food. But we scarcely got our bags unpacked when it was decided by General Foods to consolidate all of the marketing at the company headquarters in White Plains, New York, which is about an hour's train ride from New York City in the lower Hudson Valley, what I call Rip Van Winkle country. It's written about by Washington Irving. So I lived in 4 different states for a period of 6 years. It was quite difficult for me at that age. And I went to 3 different high schools. But I did have a very good record, and I was admitted to Amherst College in Western Massachusetts, where I went 4 years and did a bachelor's degree in mathematics. Then I was awarded a fellowship for study in Germany, and I lived in Europe for 14 months. When I came back to the United States, I went to graduate school, went to Stanford for a year, got a master's degree in mathematics, and then I went to the University of Arizona in Tucson, where I finished up my doctorate. My first postdoctoral appointment was at a small private liberal arts college in Anchorage, then known as Alaska Methodist University, subsequently Alaska Pacific University, when they severed their relation with the Methodist Church. I was hired here at Sonoma State in 1970, and I've been here ever since, 43 years. I did take an extended leave of absence in the early 80s, and then went back to Anchorage, where I had a mini career in financial planning. I retired officially in 2009, but I entered what we call the FERP, the Faculty Early Retirement Program, which means I'm teaching half-time for 5 years. So 1 more year to go. I taught in the fall and off in the spring, which is why I was able to make a trip to Africa, which was home about 2 weeks ago. As for family, I have no children. I've been married twice, the first time to a woman, the second time to a man. The first marriage lasted 13 years, coincided with the period I was in Anchorage, and the first decade here at Sonoma State. We lived on a small farm outside of Sebastopol, where we raised birds of various kinds. We had a permanent garden and an orchard, and we raised most of our own food. It was at that time that we wrote our books about raising fowl, which were published by Ordale Press, one about chickens and one about waterfowl. Waterfowl was a better book. It was written second. Actually, we intended to write a book when we did this one. But waterfowl aren't as popular, so Ordale Press has let this go out of print. But the book, Chickens in Your Backyard, The Beginner's Guide, is still selling well after 40 years. It's now been digitized, so you can get it on Kindle. And it was translated into Spanish, and it's marketed out of Buenos Aires with the Spanish title, Como Criar el Gallo, How to Roast the Cock. My second marriage was in 1980, and it's still going and strong in its 33rd year. Of course, in 1980, no church or government recognized it, but our family and friends and neighbors and co-workers and the people who were well did. In August of 2008, our marriage was legally recognized by California before the Hammer Prop 8 came down. My husband is an Eskimo from a small village near the mouth of the Kuskokwim River on the Bering Sea coast of Alaska, southwestern Alaska. He is very knowledgeable about his culture and is kind of an ambassador for his culture to the world. He's an artist, a craftsman, singer and dancer. He has a small troupe. He performs all over the country and all over the world. He's a storyteller and has been invited to storytelling conferences. And he has a recent career in museum curation. He's very well known at the Smithsonian Institution in Washington and the National Museum of the American Indian. I like to tease him that he's on their speed dial. They call him whenever they find some Eskimo artifact in their collection and they don't know what it is. He's also some kind of poet, and I'd like to share with you a couple of short poems that he wrote. The first one is kind of a send-up of the famous poem about the Statue of Liberty written by Emma Lazarus. He calls it Aboriginal Liberty, and he identifies the author as a huddled mass yearning to breathe free. Bring me your guilt, written in the Book of Light. Highlight the do's and don'ts that I might shine bright. Bring me your death mask, stifle my face, tell me I'll forever be in a better place. Walk on sacred ground where I dare not tread, quiet places reserved for our dead. What are my chances? What are my odds? I lift my shot glass beside the light of gods. The second poem is entitled Nashkurk, which is the name of the seal mother, the great goddess of the sea. These pristine, crystalline islands of shame scrawled across the Bering Sea, waiting for a bloom unseen to blossom. Yet, from the murky depths of life, sings Nashkurk. She sings her soothing voice to the listless ones. Where are my children? Where are my children whom I have fed for eons of time? Where are my children whom I have taught the ways of the sea? Are you listening to another voice in time? Who sings for you now? For whom do you dance? What do you eat? Tell me, what is a sparrow? Oh, for those of you who are interested in some number razzle dazzle, June and I met on 8/8/80. Our marriage was officially recognized on 8/8/08. Those two dates are exactly 28 years apart. 28, as everyone knows, is one of those rare perfect numbers, which is the sum of its proper divisors. Well, I thought I'd tell you a little bit about my trip to Africa. Just ended a couple of weeks ago. It wasn't in the advertising, but I thought you might be interested in a few things. First, a very brief anecdote, which I found rather charming. 2 weeks ago, I was in a shop in Cape Town, trying to speak to the sales girl. And finally, she said, "I'm so very sorry, sir, but I just don't understand a word you're saying. Your American accent is just too heavy." So, the first thing I wanted to talk about is something of professional interest to me. One of the courses I teach here at Sonoma State is Ethnomathematics at 103. It's a course I developed about 20 years ago for our general education program, in which we investigate mathematical achievements of indigenous cultures around the world, including, of course, Africa. We look at people's number systems, how they conceive of numbers and how they name them. We look at the way they store and transmit data. We look at their kin relations, if they have mathematical interest. We look at their calendars, i.e. their conception of time. We look at their geometry, their conception of space. And we look sometimes at their games of chance for which we can bring to bear the laws of probability, and games of strategy for which we can bring to bear logical analysis. Often, some of the most interesting mathematics that people have developed comes out of their games. Well, in particular, there's a game, actually a whole family of games played across Black Africa that I call Pots and Pebbles. It's known by many different names, and it's played by a great variety of different rules. The general idea, however, is you have a series of cups and some kind of tokens. It can be pebbles, or it can be beads, or beans, or buttons, or M&Ms. I don't recommend M&Ms, actually. They manufacture lied. They do not in hand. It's played by literally all strata of society in Black Africa, from kings to cowherds. Kings probably have elaborate ivory boards with gold decoration. But in the humblest village, all it takes is scooping out some pots and dirt and giving some pebbles. You can play it. Many Americans know a game called Mancala, which actually is a version of those pots and pebbles. It was developed and marketed in the United States by the Milton Bradley Corporation, which is an American manufacturer of games. I think their version comes from West Africa, perhaps Ghana or Senegal. In my class, we play the game with egg cartons and pinto beans. So I was quite delighted when I got over there to Africa, and I discovered in the lodges where we stayed that there were pots and pebbles boards. And they occupied a very prominent place. The venerable old boards, mostly in carved wood, and often embellishments, faces or heads. In Victoria Falls, I found one in a shop that sold shown sculptures, which was made out of red sandstone and had a bird effigy carved in it. In every one of these places, I found people who knew how to play the game and were very delighted to know my interest in it and showed me how to play their version of the game. So I came home with 6 new versions of Pots and Pebbles. A second thing I wanted to talk about regarding Africa is Nelson Mandela. You probably know that he was recently in the hospital. This, of course, was big news in Africa, but he's such an important figure in the world that you probably heard about it here. I, of course, knew about Nelson Mandela before I went over there, but I came home with a new appreciation for this man. His courage, his leadership, his charisma. This was a man who was willing to spend almost 3 decades of his adult life in prison, objecting to a system which he felt was manifestly unjust. But even more important, when he got out of prison, he had more reason than anybody in the world to be bitter, to want to take revenge on his oppressors, but he didn't. Quite the contrary. His view was, we've had a rough past, there's been a lot of injustices done, we can't ignore that, we have to confront it, but let's get it out in the open, and people can talk about all the horrible things they did, and then be forgiven, so that we can go on together, hand in hand, black and white, to a better future. This is really amazing. I mean, I think this viewpoint puts him in the category of Gautama Buddha, or Jesus Christ, or Muhammad, or Mahatma Gandhi. And especially because, due to his charisma and his leadership, he was able to reach out to other blacks and Africans and convince them that this was the way to go, because it wouldn't have done any good if he was the only So virtually every black African that I met, and not just in South Africa, by the way, but I was in Botswana, Zambia, and Zimbabwe as well, they would usually bring up Mandela at some point and talk about what an inspirational leader he had been. And I wanted to talk next about Shona sculpture. The Shona are people who live in western Zimbabwe. And they have access to an interesting geological feature called the Zimbabwean serpentine, which is very carnival. So just about every male in Shona culture, at least those in the villages and rural areas, becomes a carver. I first became aware of Shona sculpture right here in Sonoma County. I went to a little store in Sonoma Plaza called Spirit and Stone, I think. I saw some Shona sculptures. I fell in love with them. I bought a couple. One was what I call the thinker, and the other was, shall we say, the lovers. I thought, when I go to Africa, I'm going to seek these out. I want to see what else is available. Well, I didn't have to seek it out. It sought me out. In western Zimbabwe, these are everywhere. In Victoria Falls, I went into a store where the entire showroom floor was covered with these sculptures. Everything from 3 inches high to 8 feet high. And the little markets out in the open that are put up and taken down every day to find traveling blankets. Even the little businessmen, the hawkers who tap on your bus window have these for sale. I bought 3 new ones of these. I would like to have bought more, but I was flying and these are heavy. I got one